If you filled out your ballot correctly, follow every single rule, and put it in the mail before Election Day, should your vote stop counting because the Postal Service took an extra day? I mean, most people would say no. And this week, the Supreme Court agreed. The court ruled that the states can continue counting mail ballots that are postmarked by Election Day but arrive during a legally authorized grace period. Okay, that was a setback for Donald Trump and the Republican National Committee, who had challenged the Mississippi law. Donald Trump spent years telling Americans that mail voting can't be trusted. He argued that ballots arriving after Election Day shouldn't count, even if the state law allowed it and the voter had done everything correctly. Now, the Supreme Court just rejected one of the central legal arguments behind that campaign. But here's the part that I think deserves more attention, because that wasn't an isolated fight. Over the last several years, we've watched battles over mail ballots, redistricting, certification, voter ID requirements, election administration, and recently the SAVE Act. Okay, those aren't identical issues, but they all revolve around the same question. Who gets to shape the rules of American elections? Now, most states say the Secretary of State, but that's why I keep coming back to our episode 37 of The Quiet Loud. I said something that I still believe today, that the allegations Trump makes collapse, but the restrictions stay. The courts rejected dozens of fraud claims after the 2020 election, and that didn't end the political fight. It just shifted the focus. Instead of proving widespread fraud in court, the conversation increasingly became about changing election laws, tightening voting procedures, and reshaping the way elections are administered. Reasonable people can debate policies. That's democracy. That's what we're supposed to do. But I think it's important to recognize that we're no longer talking about one lawsuit or one election. We're talking about competing visions of how elections should work. Here's something that often gets lost. Behind every one of those cases are ordinary people, elections workers, county officials, volunteers, the people setting up voting machines before sunrise and counting ballots long after Election Day. All right, since 2020, many of those workers have faced harassment and threats simply for doing their jobs. Think Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss out of Georgia. That's not healthy for democracy. Whether you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent, none of the above, Libertarian, whatever, we should all want qualified people willing to administer elections without fearing for their safety. Now, does the Supreme Court ruling settle this debate? Not really, not even close. Congress is still debating election legislation. States are still writing election laws. But this decision does answer one important question. If a voter follows the law and casts a ballot on time under their own state's rules, the court says that vote can still count. All right? That's a meaningful ruling. Donald Trump lost this case, but we have to stick to this. We have to be informed, because that's when people fall for the propaganda. That's exactly why this story matters, because election rules don't just affect candidates. Eventually, they affect every voter.